25th of September 25, and I'm just speaking on this because I feel I'm very sympathetic towards Ukraine. And it's the UN meeting this week, and Trump has turned up. I just watched his speech today. It was yesterday, but I watched it today, and it was embarrassing, really. I mean, it was like an 11-year-old, not even one of the sensible ones. But anyway, I mean, I would have voted for him though, because of one issue, um, which he seems to have done a lot about. Although I'm not sure if it's all just, uh, smoke and mirrors, really. We'll see. But anyway, yeah. So, yeah, I'm very sympathetic towards Ukraine. And Trump's done a total U turn because he has been an embarrassing sort of pro Russian the whole time. Nobody knows why well, I don't know why. I don't know if it's for personal gain or I really don't know what's going on. I mean, I'm trying to work him out all the time, but because I think a lot is to do with personal gain. Um, I can't really. Whether it's just to do with vanity, I don't know, or whether it's to do with being seen to helping America economically, one dimensional in a short term way. I don't know, really. But on this, I mean, I'm glad he's done a 180 degrees to turn and he's saying he will support Ukraine now, but he's just talking rhetoric in the moment. He's not actually done anything yet. And I'm trying to figure out why, because it's been embarrassing the way he's been supporting Putin and Russia, you know, because he has these fails all the time, every day, and nobody bothers because it just happens so often. You factor it in. He's probably just talking nonsense. That's what you're thinking when well, he is. But anyway, on this, I'm trying to work out why he's done 100 degrees, and I think it's possibly because the Euro countries will buy USA arms from him. And I heard something like there's some sort of fund that the European countries have got going where they'll buy arms from America, and the first lot will be like $2.5 billion or something. I'm not sure about that, but I'll try and check it out. But the other one is I'm wondering if the European nations are now going to buy all their gas and oil from America because America done fracking and it's self-supportive now on these things, and so I'm wondering maybe this is what it is, or the two things. And so, especially with them being over in Britain recently, because Keir likes to do what he done to Jeremy Corbyn, although Corbyn probably didn't fall for it, just praise him and that, and he maybe mentioned this as well. Maybe we'll buy arms and gas from you rather than what they're doing just now is they're buying it from Turkey and that who've bought it from Russia. So it's still Russian oil, but it's not been refined by Russia, that sort of thing. It's the back door helping Russia. Because Trump's mentioned this a couple of times. I heard him today saying something or yesterday saying, you know, countries supporting Ukraine still buy oil from Russia. You know, it probably means by the back door. I think, or some of them do. I think Turkey does. Turkey's always you can't tell what's going on. So this is the two reasons I'm thinking of, and I'm wondering if Keir Starmer maybe said this to him 2 weeks ago when he was over here for a second state visit that Keir done to try and ego boost him. Even though Keir probably can't stand him and that. He does these sort of things. He flatters things. He kicked Emily Thornberry out of his cabinet day one when he became Prime Minister. And then he put her in the House of Lords, which she accepted. If you'd any honour, she would have said, nah, after you'd done the dirty on me. She was the only one that didn't get taken on from her shadow cabinet. And so this is what I'm wondering, is he doing it for economic reasons, for the USA, rather than what's right, because you can't trust him at all, in my opinion, to do the right thing. I asked Google Gemini, but I didn't really get good answers or what I really expected. Yeah, I got the first bit wrong. I said the UN building, but I thought the uni building. Yeah, so here's some quotes he has, because there's a UN meeting this week, Monday and Tuesday anyway, I don't know about today, or Tuesday and Wednesday. Here are some of the quotes and key takeaways from his recent statements at the UN. A new stance on reclaiming territory. After meeting with Ukrainian President Zelensky, Trump posted on his social media platform, Truth Social, I think Ukraine, with the support of the European Union, is in a position to fight and win all of Ukraine back in its original form. This marked a significant change from his earlier suggestions that Ukraine might have to cede territory to Russia to end the conflict. In fact, he said it would definitely need to, Crimea and I think the four areas that they've had since 2014 or whatever. And now he's saying other things, let them get their land back. During a meeting with French President Emmanuel Macron, Trump echoed his new position, saying, let them get their land back. He also called Russia a paper tiger, suggesting its military is not as formidable as perceived. Yeah, because Ukraine's doing a fantastic job, in my opinion, both holding the front line, but also the stuff they're doing, like bombing the refineries and sending drones, really thousands of miles, I think, really making the Russians the public suffer discomfort, not violent discomfort, just discomfort where they're having to queue for petrol and stuff, because that's the kind of thing you can really turn like. If a public's not really, their heart's not really in it, something like that can turn them from being fanatics and sort of support of it to not wanting that, because they just want an easy life, really. It's not something, whereas the Ukrainians, they don't want to be taken over by the Russians because they've had that before and they remember and they didn't like it, so they're going to fight to the death, really, But this is just amazing because he's saying the whole thing. There's always been Putin's body, really. Criticism of Russia. I've always thought that maybe he's getting money from Russia or something, or Putin. I don't know. I really don't know. Criticism of Russia, or maybe he just likes hanging about with bad leaders, like murderers, like in The Godfather or something. Criticism of Russia. In his remarks, Trump said that Russia has been fighting aimlessly for 3.5 years, a war that should have taken a real military power less than a week to win. Yeah, exactly, yeah. He also noted that Russia's economy is in big economic trouble, because it looks now that the most important part of these set of wars are drones, really. So, I don't know. Support for NATO's right to defend airspace. Yeah, because Russia's been floating drones and stuff into NATO airspace. Poland, Denmark, Norway. When asked by a reporter whether a NATO country should shoot down Russian aircraft that enter their airspace, Trump responded, yes, I do. So that's another instance of a more assertive stance against Russian aggression. I think he would have said the opposite a week ago even. Praise for Zelensky. Trump praised the Ukrainian president, calling him a brave man and stating that he's putting up one hell of a fight. So, I don't know what's going on here. So these statements were made on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly and represent a shift towards a more hawkish position on the war in Ukraine. And why did he change his mind? He thinks Ukraine can now fight and win back its territory. Significant change from his previous statements. So here's what they're suggesting. Frustration with Putin and the war's progress. Well, maybe he just thinks Putin's made a fool of him, which he has umpteen times, but I don't know. Evolving military and economic realities. Trump has stated that he now has a fuller understanding of the military and economic situation. Well, I doubt that. He's probably known about it all the time. He has pointed to the significant economic strain on Russia and the resilience of the Ukrainian people as reasons for his changed perspective. I mean, I doubt that. Why change it now after 3.5 years, It's been pretty obvious, The ongoing difficulties Russia is facing, including economic problems and a protracted war, may have convinced them that a different outcome is possible. Meeting with Zelensky. The recent meeting with President Zelensky on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly appears to have been a turning point. I don't think so. I mean, when you think of the way he mistreated Zelensky in January in the White House, I don't think that's the case. Although Zelensky's handled it really well because he's never really criticised Trump. You know, personally, I would have given up really and just writhed in Europe, but he's not done that. Domestic and political considerations. Yeah, he's saying that a more hawkish stance on Russia could appeal to a broader base of voters, including Republicans, who have been critical of his past perceived softness on Putin. So, I mean, that could be it. I don't know if that's what it's shown in the polls. I thought Republicans were sort of pro-Putin. I don't know why. I have no idea why. Especially in the MAGA lot, you know. So, as well as moderates who see the defence of Ukraine as a matter of national credibility. By aligning himself more with NATO and European allies, he could be seeking to consolidate support. So maybe he's thinking of votes. I don't know about that, but it could be. A negotiating tactic. Some White House officials and analysts have suggested that the change in rhetoric is a deliberate negotiation tactic by adopting a tougher stance. Trump may be trying to pressure Putin back to the negotiating table on terms that are more favourable to the United States and its allies. Well, who knows? It's important to note that this shift in rhetoric does not necessarily mean a change in US policy. So there we go. And some sources have pointed out that his comments still place the onus on Europe and NATO to provide the financial and military support needed for a Ukrainian victory. Well, as Ben Hodges says, and he was a former American leader of the American part of NATO, as far as I remember, up to about 2018. He says that Europe should be supporting this anyway, supporting Ukraine totally anyway, because they've got the money and they should have the capability, you know. Don't depend on USA, especially under Trump. So I put this question to: is it because other nations will buy arms and oil from USA? By that I mean really the EU plus Canada, Australia. So I'm wondering Trump's changing stance on Ukraine may be linked to US economic interests, particularly in the arms and energy sectors, is a common analysis, especially in comments from his political opponents and from Russian officials. Here's a breakdown. Weapons sales, a prolonged or intensified conflict in Ukraine, coupled with a renewed push for European nations to increase their defence spending, directly benefits the American defence industry. Trump has been a long-time advocate for NATO members to meet their defence spending commitments, 2% of GDP. I thought it was more than that. I thought it was 4%. By encouraging Ukraine to fight and win, and by promising to supply weapons to NATO, for NATO to do what they want with them. He is creating a scenario where European countries will likely need to purchase more US-made military equipment to replenish their own stockpiles and to arm Ukraine. This dynamic in which European nations buy US weapons and then send them to Ukraine has been a key component of US and NATO support. I mean, I'm wondering if maybe because Israel bombed Qatar the other week, I think Saudi Arabia and Pakistan have done an agreement where Pakistan will give them nuclear protection. And I'm wondering if he's starting to think, well, all these Arab countries might stop buying US stuff because they don't trust US anymore, and rightly so, in my opinion, because of Trump. Because he let Israel bomb Qatar. Because I think Portugal said it's not going to buy F-35s anymore from the US. It's going to buy, I don't know, from France or something. So maybe it's something to do with that. It's trying to win back. They're going to get them all to buy US stuff again. Energy exports, yeah. Another core part, is Trump's message here again, was his demand that European countries immediately stop buying oil and gas from Russia. Yeah, that's what I noticed, so this is what made me wonder. He has repeatedly called these purchases inexcusable and has stated that they are funding the war against themselves. Totally correct. I mean, he was right about that gas pipeline from Russia to Germany that Merkel done instead of relying on our own nuclear plants. What was the other thing he was totally correct on? He was something else, but yeah, the GDP thing for NATO probably. I think he was correct about that as well. Really. By pushing for Europe to end its reliance on Russian energy, Trump is creating a larger market for US oil and liquefied natural gas exports. The US has become a major global energy exporter, and displacing Russian energy in the European market would be a significant economic win for the American energy sector. Art of the deal and leverage. I don't know about this really. I mean, I think he's a terrible deal maker really. But this strategy is consistent with Trump's American first approach and his past use of economic leverage as a foreign policy tool. From this perspective, the shift in rhetoric is not just about a change of heart, but about a new way to pressure both Russia and European allies. By adopting a tougher stance, he can claim to be giving Ukraine the leverage it needs, while also creating economic opportunities for the US. It's important to note that this is a complex issue with multiple interpretations. I'm not sure about that. I think there's maybe one or two things that are fundamental to it. This is what I'm trying to find out. While the economic motives are frequently cited, other factors such as his personal relationships with leaders, I don't know about all that, really. Yeah, because somebody high up in the US area yesterday said the US can replace, well, it must be all the like liquefied natural gas that Europe needs. So I thought that was a bit of a coincidence, the day after or whatever. I think it was the energy minister. The question of whether the US can fully replace Russian oil and gas exports to Europe is a complex one, but the short answer is that the US has already become a critical and growing supplier, though a complete and immediate replacement is not simple. Here's a breakdown of the key factors. Natural gas. So this is the main way they can do it. Liquid natural gas, I think. Significant progress has been made since the 2022 invasion of Ukraine. The EU has drastically reduced its reliance on Russian pipeline gas. So this is to do with gas, really. The US has been the main beneficiary of this shift, becoming the EU's largest supplier of liquefied natural gas, so they can use that instead. The US now supplies a significant portion of the EU's LNG needs. Increased export capacity. The US has been rapidly expanding its LNG export capacity. Several new liquefaction terminals have come online, and many more are under construction or in development. The US Energy Secretary has stated that the US can now fill that hole and replace the gas that currently comes from Russia. So if they're talking about all the gas, pipeline gas, I mean, that would be fantastic. And that's partly what's made energy prices so dear everywhere as well. Also because in Britain, the gas price is linked to the renewable energy price, which is much lower. But because whichever comes online at any time, which is the dearest, that's the price for all the energy that Britain gets for wholesale. I'm talking about even renewable energy. So even though renewable energy is much cheaper, there's always a bit of gas needed for our energy grid, and the gas is much dearer because of this, Russia, etc. And that's why our electricity bills are so dear. This is another issue I've told you about. And Dale says, why are they linking renewable energy price with gas? Delink them, then the price will crash for energy in Britain. But for some reason that's not been done yet. So infrastructure challenges. While the US has a gas supply and the export terminals, Europe still faces challenges in importing and distributing large quantities of LNG. This requires new or expanded regasification terminals and pipeline infrastructure. Price and long-term contracts. Historically, Russian pipeline gas was cheaper for Europe than US LNG, which is more expensive to transport. To secure long-term supplies from the US, European buyers would need to sign multi-decade contracts, which is a significant commitment. Yes, really. Oil. Greater flexibility. The global oil market is more flexible than the natural gas market. Oil can be shipped anywhere, making it easier for Europe to find alternative suppliers. And here we go, the backdoor problem. While Europe has sanctioned direct imports of Russian oil, some of it is still finding its way to the continent through other countries such as India and Turkey, which buy discounted Russian oil, refine it, and then sell the products to Europe, so they're making money out of it. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen has called this unacceptable and has been pushing for more sanctions to close this backdoor trade. and US capacity. The US is the world's largest oil producer, and it has a significant export capacity. I think this is to do with fracking. However, much of its production is already sold on long-term contracts to other parts of the world. Redirecting all of that oil to Europe would be a massive logistical and economic challenge. Okay. And I asked her one more question, but I think I forgot that. Yeah. Yeah, that must have been at end. Anyway, I was just looking at that because Trump's totally done a U-turn. I was wondering why. I think there'll be some selfish reason. I don't know if it's selfish in terms of just vanity to do with making America look good economically, short term, or whatever. I don't think it's for the right reasons. It's not for the other reasons that all the other Western leaders are doing it. So, yeah, that's all about that. So, I thought that was interesting. Okay, goodbye.